Hello, Steve White, Trekboy89 for Steve Hearts89. Well, I watched Star Trek Discovery, Season 3, Episode 10, Terra Firma, Part 2. It opened off bad, it ended off bad. The first shot, they're coming up to the ship, and they go straight through the deck, and there is a giant cavernous space that looks like 2 or 3 decks of just machinery and droids, that's how you can tell the scale, moving around in it. And then we go through to the deck. Makes no sense, doesn't look cool, isn't interesting, we don't need droids, it's not Star Wars. It's just awful. A shot just going through the deck would have been interesting, but having this cavernous space that can't exist, there isn't enough room. Why would you waste all the inside space on just empty cavernous spaces instead of actual decks? You could fit 2 decks in there at least. So that's how it starts off. Like, someone criticised me the other week for saying that I just want to hate the show and I just look for reasons. I want to like this show. I want it to be good. I want it to at least be okay. And even when it's going okay for a while, there's always something that slaps you in the face, and this episode started off with one. Okay, so we go to the brig, and we have Burnham being thrown into the brig and then thrown into the agonizer by Giorgio because she's going to torture her into obeying or loving her again. I don't know quite what her idea was. Does she think that Michael has some good in her because she spent time with the other Michael? It doesn't make a lot of sense. And she views it almost as punishing a child, and she sort of says how, why can't they just listen? They have to learn through pain. She tells Michael a story about how she grew out of childhood fears where she'd have night terrors and sleepwalk, and that she'd follow her to a field full of fireflies, so she gave her a fish tank full of fireflies to try and remind her of her childhood or their relationship, that she was a mother. Eventually Michael breaks. There's a repetitive scene going over and over again about stuff. Eventually Michael breaks and goes to her, and she's like, well, how will you get back, the trust of your subjects again? And she's like, well, she promises to kill all the conspirators. She kills Landry and Bryce, and they've got the Ariam, the human, the actress who played the machine basically in this mirror universe. She's just a regular human. They have dinner. There's no Kelpian because apparently Kelpian is too high in cholesterol, and they're stringy. Okay. They have to find Lorca, who's been called Vicar in this universe, which means substitute because he's not the mirror one or something. It doesn't pay off. We think we're going to see him, but we don't. I can't imagine we're going to see him in the next any more of this season. I can't imagine them going back to the mirror universe. So I guess that's just not going to pay off. Giorgio assures Saru that he will be safe, that he says that he's about to have the Vihari, and she tells him the truth. And he's like shocked, and she basically says, look, live for revenge. He says that she's not from the mirror universe and to go home or whatever. I thought she said that last episode. Maybe I'm mixing up my notes. They find this guy Dugan, who is Lorca's henchman. He's in the orbit of Risa, so they warp to Risa, warp 9 to Risa, and they hit him with a torpedo and disarm the ship, which it does seem like it should be phases. Someone else pointed that out. They beam him to the brig. They start to question him. Burnham kills him, and then Michael turns on Giorgio, and we find that the crew's loyalties are divided. There's some people who are there for Michael. Who was there for Michael? Rise, Nielsen, Colbert, whatever his name is. They're all on Michael's side, and Giorgio has Killy and the Kelpians, who are now armed. Saru survived the Vihari, and he's now a superhero, and there's a really bad shot of him supposed to be throwing a guy up in the air, but you can just tell a person's being pulled up on a hoist and then drop back down again. It doesn't look convincing. And Doug doesn't look very convincing in it when he's sort of like yelling like a battle cry or something. It doesn't really work. He's usually very good, but it's probably bad direction. I don't know. But Michael and Giorgio end up in the brig, basically fighting one-on-one. Giorgio is begging basically Michael to go a different way. I've seen a better way. Basically, through being exposed to Starfleet and her time in Starfleet, she has seen that there is a better way. You don't have to live in fear. You can actually, the things that I'm sure, I don't know, people saying this, the mirror universe people, they would not think like this, they would not react like this, they would not change so easily. But if you're living in a horror environment and you see a world where you don't have to be in fear of being destroyed at any sign of weakness, I can kind of see you wanting to go to that. People saying, oh, if you swapped people over, the good people wouldn't suddenly turn bad. And I'm like, they wouldn't. They'd learn how to survive, but they wouldn't want that world. They wouldn't want to stay in this world. But if you went to a better place, you might want to. So I don't find it totally unbelievable that she could change. And I was assuming that this would be the arc that she would have in a Section 31 series. But apparently she's already got there. So they fight. We have a very nice scene where we get to see a knife go through Michael, a big sword go through Michael. And then she dies, and then we see that Michael stabbed her in the neck as well, so she dies as well, being held by Saru, and she's like, oh, you came through the Vihari or whatever, and he's like, yes. And then we see her fade out, and she goes back to the planet, the ice planet, and I was a bit confused because apparently she's been there for a minute, a bit unconscious, so whether she came out unconscious and just fell out of the thing, or whether she just appeared, I'm not exactly sure. Did she never go in and it was all in her mind? But Carl points out her little Fitbit medical bio thing shows that she's actually got 3 months of bioscience, so she was there for all that time. It didn't seem that long. It only seemed like a couple of days, so I don't quite know. But apparently it all happened, but yet she didn't affect... we wouldn't have seen any effects in the mirror universe, but the crew did interact with the mirror universe, so if she changed the mirror universe, then shouldn't that have affected how the crew interacted in the season 1 episodes, and wouldn't that affect... So it seems like there should have been some effect. But then we have the big reveal, which is Carl is in fact the Guardian from the City on the Edge of Forever. Now, I didn't really see this coming because basically he was pretending. He was pretending to be something else. He was disguised. And, the only real clue could have, the newspaper didn't make a lot of sense. Like, that was a real newspaper that Spock looked at. Why would he pick that? That was a total Easter egg. Maybe a clue, but also primarily an Easter egg. So there really weren't any clues that he really was the Guardian. And I thought he would be, but he would be... They'd somehow say that Carl was the Guardian, not that there was the Guardian disguised, and then it would reveal itself. But it's still not the Guardian. It's still 25% different, or some... Basically, they took the time tunnel from the 1960s series and stuck it inside the hole. Basically, the Guardian Forever is just a big stone object that glows. It was mysterious. It just has fog and mist coming down through the hole. It basically is not machine, not alive. They don't know what it is. It's a mystery. It was fascinating. Now they just turned it into a machine, and it's covered with cracked rock. It doesn't glow. Instead, it has an internal spinning time tunnel. It looks like the time tunnel from the 1960s series. It looks totally CGI, and it's distracting and annoying, and they really ruined it. And it's just, they just try so hard to ruin Star Trek. They went all the way to the 32nd century, so they wouldn't have to deal with any other canon. There wouldn't be any other crossover issues. They wouldn't be using anything from Star Trek that could upset fans. So what do? They go straight for the most holy thing in Star Trek, the Guardian Forever from the City on the Edge of Forever, which is like the best episode, the fan favourite, next to probably Trouble with Trebles. They usually seem to be a toss-up, but Cities always seem to be the superior episode because, it's Trebles was just light fun. People like it, but it doesn't really, it's not real a great, City on the Edge is amazing. Whichever version. So they have to go back to that. and defile that. And they explain that basically when they got into the temporal wars, that people were using the Guardian, that he basically transported people for fun, even though they were affecting time. But once they started using him to assassinate people, and that he basically took his ball and went away. Basically, he basically moved to another planet. Now, the whole point of them being on that planet was that planet was, it was like they were channeling the time travel powers or something. There was some energy on that was specific to that planet, and that's how the Guardian was able to work on that planet. So just moving to another planet, unless they found another identical planet, I don't really understand how that works. It doesn't make sense. It's like they're saying he was just an object on a planet that moved, that was separate, but he was actually part of the planet who was getting power or something, channeling something from the planet. So that doesn't make a lot of sense. And then again, like I said, we see him as a machine. You see this tunnel of machine, like the time tunnel, except it's whirring lit sort of mechanisms instead of just, black and white lines like the original time tunnel. And like I said, it's distracting, it looks CGI, it's going to date. The original was mysterious, unique, it had a mystery. In this, if you believe this is canon universe, which it's not, it's Prime Universe, so I guess there can be a totally different Guardian or a similar Guardian in the Prime Universe that doesn't actually affect the original, fine, but I don't know what they were thinking. They just made it, they took something great that was unique, mysterious, interesting, and made it just cliche and dated, just, the magical machine that does everything. I mean, they shouldn't have touched it, and they went all the way to the 32nd century so they wouldn't have to touch any original Star Trek stuff. And what do? They go after the most holy thing. So it was a huge slap in the face, but it's not a surprise anymore. Once you've been slapped in the face a few times, you kind of get numb, and it's not the big deal it was the first time. So that's what it feels like with this. Now, there's another scene where they go to the Enterprise, God, what an insult, the Discovery, and they're trying to work out how to strengthen the signal and get a signal to the Kelpian ship or something, and Booker helps out because he's done his research or something. So whether they're not up to date with specs or he found out something specifically that he got through the Emerald Chain or something, but he basically works out how to get a signal through, and they speak to the Admiral and he basically gives them permission. I wasn't paying much attention. I was kind of nodding off, I must admit. I might have missed a few lines, but I wasn't going back. I've had a stressful enough day, and I didn't want to stretch this out any longer than I had to. So then we go back to the planet, and basically he explains to Giorgio, I was testing you. I had to see that you actually had grown and that you weren't a bad person anymore and you weren't going to go back into the future and hurt anyone, so back to the past. So I'm going to let you basically use me to go back to the past and escape your death, because basically you'll be in a time where the universe are not so separate that you're being torn apart and your cells aren't being torn apart, basically. Your molecules aren't being torn apart, and you'll be able to live and you'll survive. So she walks through, Michael has to say goodbye to her, but she walks through, and of course we don't see where she goes, because all we see, instead of seeing the image of where they're going, we just see this long tunnel of mechanics spinning, which is supposed to be magical because it's like, it's like you see through one side there's a long tunnel, and then on the other side you don't see anything. So it's like the TARDIS, but they took something, like I said, that was good, and they just made it not good. And that's what Discovery seems to do. And I thought this season was going to get away from all of that, but they've destroyed Starfleet. They've changed the Guardian from the City of Edge of Forever. I wasn't expecting them to do that. I wasn't expecting it on that level. Like they're kind of doing what they did with the Menagerie, where we see the Telosians, but it's not the Telosians, but it is, but it's not, because it's this universe, the Prime Universe Telosians, who look different from, which doesn't really make sense, from the original canon ones. So, yeah. So then we go back to the ship, and there's a weird moment where, was I watching this out of order or something? That the Admiral says, because he finds out Michael's coming back to the ship alone, he assumes that Giorgio is dead, and everyone seems to assume that Giorgio is dead. Now, the worst cringy scene, well, the most cringy scene anyway, is the end where they're basically toasting her and having a memorial. Now, she didn't spend a lot of actual time on the ship, and I can't believe she got close to any of these people. Michael kind of, but this praise and affection for this homicidal, genocidal dictator who destroyed worlds and civilizations and killed numerous people. It was this space Hitler, basically. And they're all like, oh, she was the best thing ever. She made me learn so much. She was the mirror I didn't know I needed. She was a mother. She was a sister. She was my friend. I loved her. I hated her. She was a tormentor, but a truth teller. And it's just bizarre. It doesn't make any sense. It's almost like they're just sort of trying to tribute the actress. It sort of breaks the fourth wall if you look at it that way. But at least it makes some sense why the actors would miss the actress, but the characters would not be that attached to her. It doesn't make any sense. Like most of Discovery, it's just badly written, doesn't make sense. So there you go. I don't think I missed anything out. So yeah, I wasn't happy with how they used the Guardian. I didn't think it was going to be the Guardian because I thought it was going to be some abstract version that we could think was, but they wouldn't say for sure, so that way they could sort of get credit for using the Guardian but not really use it. I wasn't really sure what they were going to do. I thought that's how they're going to spin it. I didn't think they were actually going to say, like, he literally, his voice changes and he says, I am the Guardian of Forever. And then the door explodes and it turns into the Guardian, but instead of smooth rock that glows from within when it talks, it's like dented, damaged sort of rock, and you have this giant time tunnel that really does look like the time tunnel, but it's mechanical parts with lights that are spinning. It seems to go on for a fair while before there is like a light at the end of the tunnel, but you no longer see the footage. You no longer see this. It just doesn't work. It could have been worse, I guess, but I just don't know why they do this. Why they would go all the way to the 32nd century just to go back and pull out something out of the lore, something that's precious, and mess with it. It never works. It never goes well. The fans don't appreciate it. The real fans, who really care about the show. But I guess I'm going to go. I don't have anything else to say. I didn't look at the preview for next week because I just didn't want to think about it. I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, I guess Shoujo has gone back into the past, so they have the option of doing the Section 31 show. But she seems to have had her arc, so I don't really see the point of the show, character-wise. So who knows what's going to happen now. But, yeah. The only other interesting thing that happened was there's rumours that Netflix is going to get all the Star Trek series from CBS All Access. And now there's talk that Amazon Prime has picked up Lower Decks for international distribution. I don't know if this is true or not, but I just heard that. So I'm going to have a bit of a look into that, and if it seems like it's true, I might make a video about that. But it does seem a bit repetitive because I just made a video about apparently Netflix getting all the series. So they can't both have them. So who knows which rumour is true. Maybe they're all rumours. But I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Just 3 more episodes and then I don't have to do this. I watch it so you don't have to. Thanks, bye.